Welcome back. All right, so it's Toronto. We're going to talk about Toronto. Of course, with Toronto, there's always that one issue, is it the playoffs. So regular season, we know they're good. Regular season, they've been good for years. Many, many years now. They've been a very good regular season team. They're always high up in the power rankings. It is what's going to happen in the playoffs that leaves us saying, so where are they going to end up? So they're 31-12-8, and honestly, a very good record after what was a mediocre start. They started the season 4-4-2 through the first 10 games, but they recovered very well. They were 10-5-5 by the end of the 20-game mark, 19-5-6 at the 30-game mark, so they were 9-0-1 between game 20 and game 30, 24-9-7 at the 40-game mark, so a bit more of a mediocre record there, but right now they're 31-12-8. So 7-3-1 since that 40-game mark, and they have one game left before the break, so I'm recording this before that game. That's on February the 1st. That's against Boston, and with Boston having lost 3 in a row, I could see Toronto beating them. So Toronto has been number one on the power rankings this year. They've been as low as 11, and the funny thing is, I remember the week they were 11, a lot of Toronto fans saying they need to be lower than that. That was after the California trip. And while I thought the California trip was rough, I didn't overreact to it. They're currently number 4 on the power rankings board, and I think that's a good spot for them. The interesting thing being Boston, Tampa, and Detroit, or Boston, Tampa, and Toronto are all in the top 4. Their playoff odds are listed at 99.2%. I'd be very surprised if they didn't make the playoffs. I think shocked would be a word for it as well. They are a contender. And the funny thing is, I know there are people who are going to look at that and say, no, they're not. Until they win in the playoffs, they're not a contender. All saying that the team is a contender says is, I believe this team is in contention for being able to do something in said playoffs. It does not mean that I believe that they're gonna run through to the conference final or a Stanley Cup final, but they have a team that might be able to do that, and they've made some changes. This seems to be a different team than they were the last couple of years, but I've said that before, and that's the trick, right? Their MVP, for me anyways, I think it's been Mitch Marner. You can also make the argument for Nylander. You could make the argument at points of the year it's been Matthews. You could also make the argument it's been goaltending at points this year. When you look at their top 5 scorers currently after tonight's game, 28 goals, 31 assists, 59 points for Nylander, who had a very good game against the Capitals tonight. So did Marner, who's now sitting at 18 goals, 41 assists for 59 points. Austin Matthews, who's out for the next few weeks, 25 goals, 28 assists, 53 points. Tavares, 21 goals, 30 assists, 51 points. Would not be surprised to see his point totals come up while Matthews is out. And Bunting, 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points. He's proven that last year was just a precursor to what was going to happen this year, and he's played quite well. So their tandem being Samsonov and Murray might be the one thing that we're still going to be talking about. So we talk about how they've had issues in the first round. And very often people will point at the goaltender. Freddie Anderson, he's not good enough. Gone. Before that, it was James Reimer. Gone. And you can go further back, and there's other goaltenders we can go through as well. Now it's Samsonov and Murray who get a chance to prove they're going to be good enough to get this team out of the first round. Matt Murray has 2 Stanley Cup rings. He was very much responsible for at least one of those for Pittsburgh. And he was at least in the running for the Conn Smythe up until that Stanley Cup final, and then Sidney Crosby's a pretty good player, but Samsonov has been playing some inspired hockey recently. Being dumped off by Washington had to be tough. That had to be tough for him, and he chose to sign in Toronto and pick a shorter term contract than he might have got somewhere else, just to show he can play and show he can be a starter. And so either way, I think Toronto has shown that at least this roster right now has justified Kyle Dubas's moves in the offseason. I think the goaltending shown that they were smart moves. And I think they've played well. And then you factor in all the injuries and the fact that blue line is just constantly missing 3-4 guys, and yet they still have a good record. They still have good defensive numbers. So that speaks to good coaching and a good organization that has some depth there. Now, pending UFAs, you have Kerfoot. I would think they find a way to keep him. You have Engvall. I'd be kind of surprised if Engvall doesn't stick around. Kampf, same with Kampf. I think he's been a good bottom 6 forward. Bunting's the big one. Bunting's the one that they need to be able to keep. I think if they can find a way to keep Bunting without breaking the bank, that's really important. But Bunting definitely deserves to make some cash this summer. He deserves to have a pretty good contract. Simmons probably playing out the string right now. I would think this could very well end up being his final season. but he's been a good foot soldier for the Toronto Maple Leafs while he's been there. Aston, he hasn't complained about getting sent down and waived or anything either. Aston Reese has been decent for them after coming in on a tryout and earning himself a contract. Hall might be the most polarizing figure on that blue line because if you look at the actual stats, he's not bad. But if you listen to fans on certain nights, you would think he's just awful and he's got to go. And I understand that's the nature of hockey, that the defense, the goaltending will usually get a lot of the blame. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. Do they keep Hall around? How much is he worth? What kind of extension would he get? Or do they walk away from him this summer? Either way, Hall is a part of a very solid blue line that's also included Jordy Ben when he's been healthy enough to play. Jordy Ben's a good depth defenseman. Dahlstrom's been on IR all season, so no idea what's going to happen with Dahlstrom between now and the end of the year. And Dryden Hunt cleared waivers and went down to the American Hockey League. So these are all their UFAs. They can move one or two, or they might just keep everybody. They're in a position right now where they're likely going to be adding at the deadline. I would think they'll add some depth up front, probably some depth on the blue line, just because depth moves are a good idea. I don't think major surgeries needed with this team. I think they're still pretty darn good. I look at a couple of their playoff losses, and I really think it's here. I think it's really, once they're in a position to eliminate a team, they play differently. And I've seen people say they play scared. I will say that they do play like a team that's trying not to lose rather than a team that's trying to win. If they can relax in the playoffs this year and they can play to win and not worry about the losing part, just go out there and have fun and relax, this could be a big year for them. But again, at the All-Star break, there's nothing really to be overly concerned about. Things are going pretty well. We'll be judging them on the playoffs, won't we? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.